Good evening. It's Eve here filling in for Hattie Raphael tonight. On tonight's episode of The Ball is Round, looks like Matthias Kokoro is a done deal for CF Montreal. As well, we get the latest news and information out of their preseason camp in Tucson. The Canadian women's national team will be facing some familiar foes at the She Believes Cup. And Mauro Biello is going to lead the men's national team into a crucial knockout match. All that and more on episode 163 of The Ball is Round. And I'm so happy to be joined this evening by my wonderful co-host, Elias Gregoriadis. How are you this evening, Elias?
Not too bad. Excited that, preseason has started. That means we're close to the actual season.
Yeah, for sure. Starting to feel like some movement's really happening.
Exactly.
So that being said, obviously we are without Hattie tonight, but he does have a very good excuse to be absent. So he is enjoying his son's birthday. So we say, of course, a happy birthday to Nadim, Hattie's son. But he'll be back with us next week. So did you, before we dive in, have a good weekend on the footballing front this weekend, Elias?
Yeah, I mean, Barcelona won. Real Madrid got knocked out of the Copa del Rey. So all in all, one of the better soccer leagues. and the women's team won Spanish Super Cup. So
excellent.
All in all,
can't ask for much more.
It's been worse. Let's just say that.
There we go. It has been worse. So let's dive in with obviously what is the hottest. And because I'm leading things tonight, I get to say it's not news until it's officialized by the club. So the hottest, whatever is one step before news, the hottest, almost confirmed rumor. But if you live through the Jimmy Bjorn saga, then you will know why I am so hesitant to call anything confirmed until it's truly, truly done.
That's fair. That's a learned skepticism.
Exactly. It does, however, look like the white smoke is blowing because all sources from all around MLS and South America are now confirming the same news that was broken by Milton George of Couscous Peri Peri, that Matthias Kokoro, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right, I am doing my best, the Uruguayan striker who has been linked with Montreal now for several weeks, will indeed be joining the club in the coming hours, if not the coming days. So he is a mustachioed 26-year-old forward. Yes, with a fierce mustache. He's been playing with Huracan in the Argentina Primera Division since 2021. Joined their team on loan at that time and was permanently signed in 2022. According to Transfermarkt, in 110 matches across all competitions, he scored 31 goals and recorded 7 assists. And he has a really interesting nickname amongst his fans. It's called El Zorro, aka the Fox, which, of course, if you're talking about a striker, we love to hear about a fox in the box, right?
We do. Maybe that's why Renard is keen on his services.
Maybe. Yes. So Elias, it appears to be everything but a done deal. So how do you feel about this signing from kind of the bits and pieces that we've been learning as things have heated up?
Look, I mean, we sound like a broken record when we've been asking for a danger man, for someone who knows how to put the ball in the back of the net instinctively, right? And we got one, right? By every definition of it, we seem to have someone that can do just that, right? He could score in a number of different ways. He's good with both feet. He can hit. He's good in the air. So look, still have to wait and see how honor Hadi and say wait and see. But we still have to see, what he's like and how he gels with the team. Obviously, because there have been players that come into this league and catch fire immediately, and others that take some time to maybe marinate and get used to the soccer over here, and some that just never take, right?
Mm-hmm.
So look, by every sense, by every metric that you're looking at, this seems to be a very sensible signing. This seems to be a very it doesn't seem to be a very high risk, high reward type signing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, look, if you're looking for someone reliable, a lot of the numbers that you can find on him show just that, right? He doesn't score. He's not going to score you 30 goals this year. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for a consistent producer, he seems to be that. He doesn't slump for too long, and he loves scoring goals and getting under people's skin, which is what you need in a proper striker in MLS.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. So really, really curious. Really going to be interesting to see him. I think we've seen like a lot of the feedback and a lot of the opinions that have come out about this player are that he's very, very, very hardworking, which I suspect is going to fit in very nicely with Laurent Courtois' requests of
Yeah.
his players and the mentality that he wants them to play with. As well, he comes from a very humble background. So I know I did see one of the clips that had been kind of going around. Said his parents were working hard. His mom cleans streets, and so obviously he's kind of really, really worked his way up. And he seems to be very much beloved by fans of Huracan. So it's always, I think, interesting when you see that the fans are disappointed to see a certain player go.
Yeah, I think it's almost more telling than what like front office executives have to say about a player is when
Mm-hmm.
you see fans that are specifically bummed
Yeah.
out. Then I think it's usually a good sign.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, this might come at kind of a lucky moment because my understanding is like the economic situation in Argentinian football is not ideal right now. So I think perhaps it's kind of going to end up this signing might even be like a win-win-win, a win for Montreal, a win for the player, and a win for the club that got some much needed revenue. Huracan, not Montreal, obviously. But Montreal will be getting lots of revenue this year, given they've completely sold out season tickets. As an aside, yeah. So the estimated number that we've been seeing around for this transfer fee is in the neighborhood of about $2 million. So upon officialization of that news, it will
Yeah.
be very interesting to see if he winds up being a designated player, or if some TAM is going to be used to buy down his contract, because of course the transfer fee does have to figure into the player's budgetary charge in the salary cap. So that's going to be very interesting to see as well. And hopefully everything is officialized by this time next week so that can be broken down on our next episode.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd be surprised if there was no time at all involved. I think that
Mm-hmm.
someone of at least his reputation, maybe if they can whittle his contract down to not be needing that
Just kind of
designated
close to that
player
maximum.
stamp. Exactly. It's kind of in line with what Ramon Kyoto was making, right? There is
Mm-hmm.
a significant chunk of of the wage bill that is gone because of Matko Milivojevic being gone, Zachary Brugger being gone, Aaron Herrera, who I don't think Ron made as much as Aaron Herrera, so that's a significant trade-off in terms of salary. And then obviously Ramon Kyoto was the big one. But so it's nice to see that that's not just going to be dead space, and that they're looking to
Mm-hmm.
fill that part of the wage bill, because even though Montreal does have the smallest one, uh doesn't mean you have to keep shrinking it. So
Exactly. No, very much. I agree. It doesn't mean you have to be at the bottom of the barrel for things like that. So, no, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think, especially kind of coming off of last season when Montreal's leading goal scorer had 5 goals to his name, I think definitely this is hopefully a player who's going to fill or going to tick a lot of the boxes that supporters were looking for. That being said, and I know you mentioned it a little while ago, like no two players seem to adapt to MLS at the same speed or in the same way. So it'll be really curious to see how, especially under a new coach as well, he's kind of brought in and learns the interestingness of the league, learns the pace, learns the physicality, and things like that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of his MO, especially when it comes to not scoring goals, is
Mhm.
still very physical, still very assertive, kind of get in your face and get under your
Yeah.
skin, which is it's never a bad thing to have an MLS, especially with how a lot of defenses like to play. So I think someone that not only doesn't back down but relishes that kind of animosity between teams is
Hmm.
will at least adapt to the psychological part of MLS relatively well. Again, the technical side of it and everything like that remains to be seen, but at least the butting heads type. Um, we
Hmm.
lose out Ramel Kyoto and we still keep that fire. So that's one thing that I did like to see.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And you know what? Character like that is needed in a team to just to kind of keep things interesting. And that's also part of the show on the pitch at the end of the day. Of course, it's you know, hopefully he can keep his temper on the pitch on his side under control. But if some players on the opposing team pick up some silly yellow cards, I don't think anyone on the Montreal side of things are going to complain.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so Patrick noted here as well that he said goodbye and mentioned Montreal on his Instagram. And if you're Instagram official about it, that's a pretty good sign as well. Yeah.
The hard launch, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully
So
it's
I don't know if any hardcore supporters out there are, tracking flights. um, and I,
waiting
I
for him at
assume,
the airport. Yeah,
yeah, I'm not even sure which airport you'd wait at if you would. I assume he would probably have to go to Montreal for some paperwork.
I don't think
If
he'll be going
nothing.
straight to Arizona.
Yeah, I
That's for sure.
agree. I agree. It would surprise me. But at the rate MLS moves these days, and with DocuSign and things like that, maybe it could be done. I don't know. Nonetheless, if anyone's doing a vigil at the airport, certainly keep us posted. And as well, we see Chan here who says, hi, Eve and Elias with the Mercato, ça sent la coupe. I'll never say
Okay.
that. Yeah, you got the wrong host tonight to say ça sent la coupe, but
Nobody loves ironically saying Cesar Cook more than me. So I hope that's the kind of
I don't know.
area you're
Chan
in.
Chan might
But
have you beaten for that.
but
He likes to say it a lot.
yeah, it's a bit much still.
Yeah, yeah. No, we can dream, but I will say it doesn't necessarily smell like 14th place. How's that?
No, that is true. At
Yeah.
the very
If we're
least,
yeah. And that's a start. It's a jumping off point.
baby steps.
Yeah. So what else can we say about Kokaro while we wait for his signing? It's really interesting. He seems to be a very interesting player. I think we'll be entertained seeing him on
Yeah.
the pitch. And I think that's something that we've all been pretty desperate for after last season. So for me, I don't say it very often, but I'm excited. I know, poor
That's
Hattie. He's gonna be
that
sad that
is
he.
yeah. Hattie's gonna hear this and go, I missed an excited. Wow.
An excited Eve
What
and
kind
not
of
the.
expectations though? I mean, are you kind of because again,
Yeah.
it's tough to be like I want X amount of goals, X amount of assists, and that's a successful
Hmm.
season, right? Because like we said, right, it really is an enigma to see how someone adapts
Yeah.
to this league. But what would make a successful season, not counting
Yeah.
obviously goals and assists?
Um, like for the player individually.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's hard to measure without measuring goals and assists, I think, especially in the case of a striker, because that position is kind of based around goals. I think probably being the starting striker, because nobody right now is the starting striker for Montreal. That position's completely up for grabs. And especially if we think he's going to be at the very least a TAM player, if not DP, he would be the highest paid striker amongst the existing squadron. Um, so I think that would absolutely be a bare minimum requirement as well. Like I think you do have to mention goals when you mention success for this position, and I think as I said 2 weeks ago, it would be a success for Montreal season to have a 10 goal scorer, And I think that would be a very good success for him, looking at the numbers that he's posted to date.
Yeah. No, that's
Uh,
true. I think
yeah.
that, if, especially for replacing someone like Ramon Kyoto, who at his best also made everyone around him better,
Hmm.
and kind of, whether through either chance creation or just sheer force of will, did encourage the people around him to be a bit more audacious, and that's something that was very obviously lacking last year. If
Hmm.
he could kind of bring back that fire and have people say, you know what, yeah, I'm going to take somebody on, or yeah, you know what, I'm going to have a go from 30 yards out because
Hmm.
I can, and I think I can make the goalie work or something. I think that maybe reigniting that kind of fire sounds a bit cliche, but reigniting that, at least that audacity, I think is the right
Hmm.
word, to just try something. And I think
Yeah.
that, Laurent Courtois is the kind of manager that will let players, if they're feeling themselves, you know, see where the wind takes them. And I think that having a striker like that, like, a very dynamic presence, personality on the field, will kind of encourage them to maybe embrace that a bit more. Because you saw, like last year, there was, everybody seemed a bit reserved and everyone seemed almost terrified to make a mistake. So I might as well just play safe instead of trying something. I think it's also why we were so enamored with like Jonathan Vincent when he came on, because he would always just try and take somebody on, and we're like, oh
Yeah.
my god, I haven't seen a 1v1 take on in like 3 games.
Yeah.
So I think having someone like that who just brings that kind of um that willingness to just be maybe stubborn sometimes and light something up would be probably one of the my maybe qualitative markers for
Okay.
a successful season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to see that kind of that energy.
Yeah, no, really, really interesting. And Patrick has pointed out something else that's interesting. He scored the same amount of goals as Piatti through his whole career, but or as Piatti at the time that he had arrived, anyway. But in half the number of games that Piatti had played. So that's an interesting point to play
That
to
is
to
true.
make. Of course, they did play different positions, so I think
They
Piatti
were
would have
not
been
the same.
expected, yeah, to be more of a creator, although he was certainly the goal scoring machine in Montreal. But that is a really interesting point for comparison, nonetheless, because of course the last time we had um, an Argentinian kind of who we all hung our hats on, or sorry, he's Uruguayan, my apologies, but the last time we had a
In the
player who
Argentinian
came
league.
from Argentina, an Argentinian team who we all hung our hats on as the next big thing, of course, was Nacho Piatti, and yeah, that
I
worked out
think he
pretty
kind of
well.
paid. I think he kind of delivered on that just a little bit.
Just a shade, just a shade. I'm always happy to talk about him. So we did get a question from Robbie, and it kind of feels like a good point to address it right now, unless you have anything else to add on
Great.
the hopefully soon to be confirmed new signing. All right, let's take a look at Robbie's question here. So Robbie asked us, with the new additions set and about to be set, love that he did it like that. Which of last year's regular or semi-regular starters are going to have a hard time cracking the lineup this year? Elias, do you want to go first?
And it pains me to say this because I really do like him so much, but I think Mason Toy is going to have a really tough season finding
Mm,
minutes, because of the fact that now, it comes down to, especially if, you have your new starting striker and they do decide to play with one striker. We'll see what the formation is. But
mhm.
if you do have your starting striker, then coming off the bench, it's all about profiles. And you have, Chinonzo for, who has his own thing. For better or for worse, if you're looking for one thing and that's what you're looking for, he's pretty much the only player on the team that has it, right? The same goes for, Sunusi Ibrahim, who off the bench can provide a very specific thing, right? And I think he's more of a like for like substitution for Mahala in that respect. And then, it comes down to Mason Toy and Jonathan Vincent, who profile wise are very similar. And I think that, given the fact that he's a local player, he's significantly younger. I think that if they're gonna pick who gets minutes between the two of them, I think that the club is gonna prioritize Jonathan Vincent. And
Yeah.
so assuming he stays healthy, right? So I think that Mason Toy might be one of the people with the most work to do in terms of finding anywhere near the amount of playing time he got last year, if not more. Um, Chance did another good one. Bryce Duke, especially someone like Dominic Yankov does. I mean, we'll get into that. That's even more
Yeah.
hypothetical than
Yeah.
but
At this moment,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, that's still very, very much if. But Bryce Duke again, if they don't really employ a 10, but they have, for example, two eights and a pivot, or they have a flat midfield of three. Bryce Duke doesn't really fit into that mold. And now if they're looking for someone off the bench that can maybe open the game a little bit, or if they're maybe playing a team that'll sit deeper and they want someone who can play like Bryce Duke, sure. But um, he's another person who has a lot of work to do that maybe hasn't gotten the same amount of time.
Mhm.
And the third person I think of is George Campbell, because you have someone like Sosa coming in on loan, who we've seen center backs come in from loan from Bologna that have been very impressive. Namely Gabriel Corbo, but also Louis Binks, and there is a history of that. They come into the club, they find not only minutes
Yeah.
but skills. And I think of the three, the player whose position is the least solidified in that starting center back trio is George Campbell.
Yeah.
So he now has some competition, and hopefully that brings out the best in him. But those are three players I think are going to maybe have a bit more work to do. But yeah, it's a very good question by Robbie. Who are your players?
Yeah, it was. So I'll also just add that I think as well the players, obviously now with the arrival confirmed of Sosa, I think for the players who we had identified as depth players. So I'm thinking of like a
Mhm.
Jabang,
Yeah.
a Robert Thorkelson, guys like them, especially with George Campbell, who ostensibly should be ahead of them in the hierarchy. I struggle to see them getting minutes like outside of Canadian Championship or the
Mhm.
worst injury crisis in Montreal history, which I
That's
think
saying
we had
something.
last season.
That's saying something.
Yeah. So I also think of guys like them. Um, but as well, like I don't disagree. I think with anybody else that you mentioned on your list. I think maybe we'll talk about it now, just because it does kind of segue. I also think like with the rumored signing of Dominic Yankov, who is of course a Canadian-born attacking midfielder, who currently plays for the Bulgarian
Yeah.
national team. That being said, he is another rumored link to Montreal. And, I do wonder. I certainly do wonder, for guys like Rita Zuhir, for example, who I had said is somebody I would hope to see coming back to really make a
Mhm.
link. Um, or to like to make a link up, with a bunch of the midfielders who are de facto starters, certainly and ahead
Yeah.
of him. But yeah, I do. I think of him as well, and that kind of disappoints me a bit for sure. That
Yeah, I
being
think
said,
once the
yeah.
schedule gets a little bit crazier, I do think there's gonna be more time for him. But I think you're right, at the beginning of the season, especially, unless he has a rock star training camp, I think that
Mhm.
he is, number 4 or 5 on the depth chart in
Mhm.
that central midfield position. So he has a lot
Exactly.
of work to do. But I
Yeah.
look, this is like the second. This has to be the last 2 years in a row. He um, got off to a really good start to start the season, right? I mean, he was doing
Yeah.
better than Malcone at the beginning of the year. He was doing better than Nathan
Yep.
Saliba at the beginning of the year last year, right?
Yeah.
And then either minutes or loan kind of interrupted that. But I think
Mhm.
if you give him the chance to spend a full season, you're going to get a really, really, really strong return.
Yeah,
So,
I
I,
agree. Yeah, which is why, we're certainly keeping an eye on the potential signing of Dominic Yankov, which is, like you said, a lot more hypothetical right now, certainly, than the striker signing. But yeah, that'll be really, I think, a really interesting puzzle and a really, really interesting headache for Laurent Courtois, should that also come to pass. And I think this is kind of a moment as well that brings us to our second question of the evening that we got from Amin. So Amin asks us, do you think that some players like Jabang or a player from the academy who signs as a homegrown off roster will be loaned to USL or CPL like Zoo here with San Antonio and SC with Ottawa? Do you want to go first, Elias?
yeah, I think that, someone like Usman Jabang absolutely needs a loan, right? He
Mm-hmm.
got all of like
Yeah,
half an hour.
Completely
in
agree with
playtime
you.
last year.
Yeah.
And look, nobody benefits from that. And so hopefully someone like Laurent Courtois comes in who has experience with an academy setup and the benefits of minutes over playing with the first team. Can maybe convince some of the players, because we had people like Natal Saliba, we had people like Jonathan Davies saying who, for better or for worse, said, "I'm not going out on loan. I'm making my name here with the
Yeah.
first team," and it worked to a certain degree for both of them.
Hmm.
Um, but realistically, that's just not going to be the case for some of these players. Like at some point, there's only so many spots on the team sheet.
Yeah.
So I think that someone like Jabang is probably the most obvious case for a loan. Um, Elias Iliadis had a really decent stint at Atletico Ottawa where he got minutes. He even featured on, the team of the week twice, if I'm not mistaken. So, and he got a lot of confidence from it. Just by the way, he played out there. So I think that, again, if there's no room, especially in a very densely packed midfield right now, I think that loans may be the best option. Another player that I was thinking of, and again, I know that he didn't want it, but I do think that, especially if you're not going to be letting any strikers go, someone like Jonathan Davies saying could really benefit from a loan in CPL, especially
Hmm.
as an attacker, to just maybe get him as many reps as possible, as many touches as possible, and get some confidence.
Yeah.
Because first of all, he would do great in CPL, and at the end of the day, nothing is a substitute for proper game time,
Experience. Yeah.
right? Look, he was very adamant about, and he was very publicly adamant about not wanting a loan
Yeah.
and talking with Video and saying, "I don't want it." But if that opinion changes, I hope that he gets the minutes he deserves.
I do kind of still almost see him as second in the pecking order behind, our hypothetical new striker, just based on performances from last season. I understand Ofor is obviously the more senior player, and established, and obviously they have wildly different profiles. But I think just from, say, a general effectiveness, I kind of, obviously preseason is happening. So perhaps there are players who have worked on some stuff in the off season. And of course, we unfortunately can't see that. We don't know because they're off in Tucson. So I might be wrong. So I am basing my opinion on last season's performances for sure. But it's, yeah, for me, he's kind of second behind whoever is the starting striker as of right now, based on 2023 and what we saw. So I would be surprised to see a loan honestly proposed for Jonathan Davies. I really would. But the other players that you mentioned, I definitely don't agree. I kind of wonder about Fernando Alvarez as well because he's so young. Um, and generally, not terribly professionally experienced already. Obviously, the team did invest in a fair bit in him, so I could see potentially them wanting to keep him close to the first team. But I think that's a player as well who could benefit from a lot of consistent minutes. And I don't know if with the reserve team, particularly where the players are so young and they kind of do all play together and so on and so forth, I don't know if that would be the best solution to get him those minutes.
Yeah, that's true, especially when you can get him in a professional environment.
Yeah, exactly. So he's probably one more name I might add to the list, but like I said, I would be a little bit surprised about that one. Yeah. So that is it for the questions that we received so far on Twitter. Anything else to add on roster moves? I know we didn't discuss the officialization of the signings of Breza and the loan signing anyway of Sosa, but we did discuss them a fair bit on last week's podcast. So if anyone was curious about what we had to say on those, definitely recommend you check out our most recent, our previous episode. But anything else to add, Elias, before we move on to our next topic?
No, we're good to go.
Okay. We did just receive a question live. So why don't we take that just because it does kind of touch on.
Oh, God.
So Chan asks, Piet or Wanyama? Dun, dun, dun.
Yes.
That's not an answer. I'll play my Hattie card. That's not an answer.
No, I do genuinely believe yes, because Wilfried Nancy showed that they can coexist. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that whether you're playing in a 3-man midfield or a 4-man midfield, ahead of a 3-back,
Mm-hmm.
um, Simon Piet did kind of relish the opportunity to have a bit more freedom with the ball, and freedom to get forward with Wanyama behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they were at their best together when they were on the field together, and then having,
Yeah.
you know, Ismail Kone was that third midfielder that kind of maybe eased the link up play, where and picked up where maybe some of Piet's technical ability kind of fell off.
Mm-hmm.
But look, he had his best season under Wilfried Nancy, and he had his best season playing with Victor Wanyama. So my answer, yes, was a bit of a joke as
Yeah.
in response to a tough question, but genuinely yes, both of them on the field at the same time, I think really does work, especially if you're trying to maximize what you're getting out of Victor Wanyama before he inevitably leaves, right? Because there is a shelf life on Victor Wanyama in Montreal. And I think having Nathan Saliba and Rita Zohir learn from two players like that, two players who they could very well emulate, is a pretty solid setup, and um, that's a pretty respectable 5-man midfield core, if you will,
Right.
of sixes and eights.
100%. Um, you know, obviously, I think we, at least at the ball is round, unanimously are in agreement that right now there are too many players in the midfield, regardless. Like some folks are going to have to go, whether it's on loan or whether it's that they depart for a new challenge, one or the other. Like there are too many players right now for any of them really to have enough meaningful minutes, I think.
Yeah,
So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see how it's balanced. That being said, if I had to choose, unfortunately, Piet is really the only player who we got a sample size from last season, and it continued to be respectable. I have no doubt in my mind, honestly, that Victor Wanyama will probably have a big resurgence this year under a new coach um, who seems to have a very different approach to managing players than his predecessor. But that being said, just because I think the only player who we can fairly judge for the 2023 season is the player that we saw a lot of in 2023, we didn't see nearly the same amount from Victor Wanyama. So I would have to say Piet has the edge as of right now. But again, preseason is long, especially this year. So it would not surprise me at all if that winds up changing and the field winds up evening it out. And you make a very valid case for both, 100%. All right, so do hope we addressed your question. So Elias, I'm gonna ask you kind of to take the reins for the next topic
yeah,
because we got to hear from Laurent Courtois for the first time out of Tucson, Arizona, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were present on that call, Elias.
yeah. It was still a bit of an adjustment, right? Seeing a new coach is always a bit of an adjustment in terms of the day-to-day of the media availabilities. But he looks very comfortable, and I kind of tweeted this out that the more we speak with him, the more excited I am to see him actually coach and actually
Mhm.
kind of, you know, dig in and make this group his own, because he just seems to be just in the right place mentally when it comes to um handling the philosophy, when it comes to handling the players, when it comes to handling every curveball that a preseason slash beginning of regular season that a Montreal can throw at you. I think he seems very, very, very secure in his role, which is very nice. He was joking on the call, and he was he seemed like it was just a regular conversation and not a an interrogation, which Arnaldo said was kind of victim to a couple times during the year. And I think that back and forth is probably going to do him well when it comes to just projecting his image. Because again, remember, players hear everything, right? Whether they whether they look at like seek it out or not, they hear the comments, especially during media availabilities. Right, it gets back to them one way or another. And having a coach talk about your group in a way that does motivate you to kind of keep working is very, very interesting. And he was talking about how one quote that I really liked and that was circulated a lot is you sweat now to bleed less later, which I
Hmm.
really like because it encapsulates exactly what you want out of a preseason, and you want to get your reps in, especially it's a place with the dry heat of Arizona. You're definitely going to be sweating, and he just seems very excited to get to the tactical part. Right, it is the first week, so it's more just about getting your reps in, taking stock of everyone's physical condition, um, knocking off any bit of the rust that may have formed during the off season. We know that nowadays with professional athletes, there's never really an off season. There's just a period of time that you're not actively playing competitive matches. Um, so that'll be interesting to kind of see how the tactical work kind of develops. He seemed very excited to kind of get after it. And of course, there's the issue. There's the topic of the friendlies coming up. There's going to be
Hmm.
a friendly. There's a friendly this weekend, and he'll be addressing the media tomorrow again. And hope to hear back because once again, we do not have access to said friendlies and said
Hmm.
preseason games. All of them. Some of them will be open to the public, but again, the public in Arizona or
Yeah.
Florida, and not the public here. So
Yeah,
just one.
and I think if I'm not mistaken, like because there's the first friendly which is open to the public, and then the last one is of course against the Tampa Bay Rowdies, but that's open to Tampa Bay Rowdies
Season ticket
season ticket
holders.
holders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the way I read it anyways that it's not unfortunately open to the general public, but maybe they'll do us a solid and they'll put it on YouTube as in previous years.
Wouldn't that be nice?
We can dream. Come on, Tampa
Yeah,
Bay. Don't let me down. You took away my hill already.
yeah.
Um,
But
mhm.
about Laurent Courtois, you know,
Yes.
we still don't have much of a sample size in terms of his interaction, right? We've had a grand total of like now 45 minutes
Mhm.
of press time, with 40 of it being,
Mhm.
you know, his unveiling, which was very organized and not as on the fly as these regular media availabilities.
Right.
What are you looking for in Laurent Courtois? From outside the media and outside the day-to-day of asking questions and getting good quotes for whatever you need, what do you want in a manager besides the tactical?
Yeah. I think especially, given recent experiences, I think you need to see a lot more of the human side of of whoever it is, honestly. Yeah, for me that's really like you want to see kind of some personality, some character. So yes, quotes and tactics and whatnot are great, but I also think like getting to kind of see how he is as a person, and I also think that gives you great insight as well as to how he probably is with his players. Is he relatable? Is he someone who makes jokes or can take kind of being the butt of a joke a little bit or whatnot? Can he joke around and have fun a little bit, or is it unfortunately all business? um that's, I think, probably what I would look at. Just because hopefully, happy coach is a sign of a healthy locker room, healthy team spirit. uh I understand it's not a perfect science, but that would definitely be something I'd look for. I don't know about you, Elias, if there's anything else.
Yeah, I think the human side of it is very important, right? Because that is what wins fans over, right? It's
Mhm.
someone that they could connect with and actively root for. And yes, having a coach who makes the team play beautiful soccer, it definitely wins over fans. But being able to celebrate with a coach, being able to connect with a coach you see on the touchline, especially in the stadium, is the easiest way, because passion is contagious, especially from the touchline. So if he's human and he's passionate on the touchline, the crowd is going to feel it and they're going to kind of give it back to him. So you did see that with
Yeah.
Fernando. You did see that with Hernando Sada when when it was going well. You did see that
Yeah.
at the fire, and I think that's what wins them over. So I really do appreciate that, and I think that another interesting part is that they're doing two sessions a day,
Yes.
and they are putting in work. So I think that's kind of maybe emblematic of the fact that they are in Arizona, and it's basically just like one long sleepaway tournament because they're spending every minute of every day together. There's no family there. There's no friends there. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they're friends within teammates, but there's no friends outside of the club that are there, right? It's just, you bond with the team. And, we made a lot about how tough the beginning of the season is at this club. Um,
Mhm.
but this may have been this could be a blessing in disguise, and it's a big if. But if they do actually happen to have a good start to the season, and take some points off teams on the road, and even maybe string a win or two together, you could look at the time in Arizona as that blessing in disguise, and maybe that exploratory construction as a blessing in disguise that maybe forced the team to address some of the issues from last year.
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah, no, that's a much stricter answer, I guess, than the one I gave. But I think that's also a really good point. And obviously, I mean, let's face it, at the end of the day, we are here for the sport and we are here for the competition. So good point, Elias. All right. Anything else regarding Laurent Courtois, what he had to say at his availability? Anything else to cover?
No, just a whole lot of smiles and a whole lot of good
Uh,
energy. He seems to be very excited to be there. So
Good, good. Hope it stays that way. At least he missed out on like the glorious frigid temperatures we had this weekend.
great. Everyone in the camp is so sad about missing out on Montreal in January. Like just
Yeah.
heartbroken.
Yeah. All right. So then shall we turn our attention to our national teams?
We finally have national team
We
news.
finally have
Absolutely.
some national team news. Yes. So first, let's start off with the women's national team. So on a Friday, we learned that in April, the women's national team will be taking off to play in the She Believes Cup in the USA, of course, for a third time in 4 years. The format of the tournament is going to be a little bit different this time because of some adjustments made to FIFA windows and, of course, the upcoming W Gold Cup. So instead of a 4-game format, it's going to be a semifinal played on April 6th and a final and third place match played on April 9th. So we have the same 3 invitees this year, along with Canada, Japan, and oh my goodness, we haven't seen them in so long, Brazil are joining the party.
Nice
So
seeing you here.
yeah, I'm like, oh, we've seen you a little while ago. Once again, I feel like we've played Brazil about 17 times in the past 2 years, but here they are again. So, how do we feel about? Yeah, how do we feel about? And they are going to be Canada's opponent as well in the first
Of course they
match
are.
of
Of course
this.
they are.
Of course, they are.
Know thine enemy, right? I guess is the
Exactly.
main takeaway.
So, Brazil
From
aside, how do we feel about Canada going to the tournament?
Look, I'm happy, right? Any games you can play against strong opponents is good, especially in a competitive environment when there's uh, a competitive format and there's a tournament format. I think that's it's never a bad thing, especially with how many important tournaments. Um, Not to discredit the Sheep Leaves Cup, but Gold Cup and the Olympics are far more important. I think, and
Mhm.
in terms of a a trophy case, from a trophy
Yes,
case basis, I think are a lot
100%.
more are probably the bigger priorities. I think that this
Yes.
is still a very solid tune-up tournament. I wish that it
Very
was.
necessary tune-up.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's still unfortunate that we can't get any of these games played in different countries to maybe spread the love around
Mhm.
to the other countries competing in the Sheep Leaves Cup. I understand that is an initiative from the Americans, but I think that would be cool to maybe have this competition in different in with different hosts.
Yeah.
But ultimately, from a competitive standpoint, I think that this is also a pretty good thing because Canada is very familiar with Brazil.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that the games were in the times where Canada played not didn't play as well were times where Canada didn't play up to their level, the level that they're capable of. And I think that um situations where Canada does exert, does get the most out of their players and does get the most out of their product, I think they have a good chance at beating Brazil. So ultimately, I'm very excited to see what kind of Canada shows up. It has very much been a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at times,
Hmm.
and you just see it from the two games, um, the two back-to-back games in Brazil, against Brazil in Canada, which was just very much two very different Team Canadas that showed up.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be very interesting. I think it does give him maybe a bit of an edge that this is an opponent very well, and there's no
Hmm.
surprises. You kind of just have to play your game, and success will come.
Yeah, no, I know last year I was kind of critical of Canada for I felt almost like cheaping out and going to the She Believes Cup in 2023 in the lead up to the World Cup. And of course, that kind of the way that tournament went for them was kind of a sign of things to come. So I returned to a little bit more humble this year. Um, and while I think probably playing Brazil for the umpteenth time is not going to necessarily be the most telling of matches, Canada, regardless of whether they win or lose that match, they are going to have a second match against either the USA or Japan, two teams who did beat them at last year's She Believes Cup. And I really hope that Canada is going to have a point to prove this time around. Of course, it is, an invitational, so it is in all things considered a glorified friendly. But if Canada had walked away with the tournament in 2023, I'd be really annoyed that this was the invitational they chose. But that was not the case, and so let's hope that we see some improvement. There's no better way to judge it when you play the exact same opponents twice in a row. So yeah, it'll be very, very, very interesting to see. And of course, that is still some time away. It feels like miles away because it isn't
Yeah,
until April 6th, as I said. But and I mean, we're gonna have the whole W Gold Cup by the time that's over. So we're going to have some matches under our belt and probably a better idea of Bev Priestman's vision going forward in the post Christine Sinclair era by the time that tournament rolls around. Uh, but it'll certainly be interesting to see. And it's good, like you said, a good tune-up for the Olympics. We'll take it.
yeah. I think that we could see a very different group.
Hmm.
Based on what happens in the Gold Cup. I think that
Yeah.
it is technically a tune-up because it's before the Olympics, but the Gold Cup is still there.
Yeah.
We talked about this a while back after the men's World Cup, but
Hmm.
you know how about John Herdman had his guys,
Hmm.
and no matter your form, you were almost like a made man in the mob. And I feel like Beth Priestman does have, um, I wouldn't say to the same extent, but there
Yeah.
are Beth Priestman players that
Yeah.
no matter your form, you
Yeah.
have a fairly decent chance of finding, if not a starting spot, at least
Hmm.
minutes.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about this a bit later, but I think that is also something that maybe the Gold Cup might end up changing because
Yeah.
again, this is uh as important as the Gold Cup is. I think it's more important to maybe draw as many lessons as possible before the Olympics because if there's one place, if you had to pick a place to go splat, between the Gold Cup and the Olympics, I'd much rather think they go splat in the Gold Cup.
Hmm.
So, um, hopefully again, right? All we ask for is learning from your mistakes,
Yeah.
and we've seen Bev Priestman be much more capable at it than other national team coaches, and much more capable than we were worried that
Yeah.
she wouldn't be able to. So hopefully that trend continues because there's still so much to learn about this team and so much to learn about the younger players who
Exactly.
are not necessarily solid fixtures in the group.
No, and there's so many players as well having incredibly interesting seasons. We have Maria Minalidou, who was called up. She's scoring tons of goals with Benfica. Olivia Smith just scored her seventh goal of the season in her first, she played kind of semi-pro, but so let's say her first pro season with Sporting, which is phenomenal. Um, Then we have Vanessa Gilles, who has scored her 6th goal of the season as a central
Already.
defender.
Better than most strikers, but
With Lyon, I was gonna say we'd take her in a heartbeat here at CF Montreal. Which is, I mean, to me that's kind of wild.
yeah,
Of course,
scoring from a
Vanessa
corner
Gilles.
is unheard of. So absolutely would take
I mean, Vanessa Gilles is a lock in that squad, so I think I was just kind of
it.
mentioning players. But then, of course, we have Evelyn Vieng, who's also had a really effective season with Roma, a little bit quieter, I think, in the past couple of
And
weeks.
she had a mini goal drought this weekend, so at least there's that. She scored this weekend, so
She
it was a
did.
very mini goal drought, but she's got 9 on the season now.
Oh, well, I was going to say, sometimes with Evelyn Vieng, 1 week it can be considered a drought.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So no, that's the thing. There's a lot of players who I think have been on the fringes for a long time, especially, our European-based players who are going into the W Gold Cup, and then as well that will be going into She Believes Cup, in the full swing of their season, whereas the NWSL-based players are in the off season. So yeah, both competitions, I think that Priestman has to deviate from the norm 100%.
I think that kind of also has to do with the fact that nobody
Mhm.
still really knows the attacking identity of this team,
True.
right? The defensive core we talked about, the defensive core of that group is as set in stone as anything is in that team. The midfield, yes, there's some competition, but we largely know who will be in that midfield more or less. And it's really the attackers that I feel Beth Priestman still hasn't managed to find that golden
Yeah.
combination. Um, I think just with the amount of talent there, it's inevitable that it's going to come.
Someone's going to click.
Exactly. Like there's just like the Tetris pieces will fit perfectly.
It's just
At
almost
some
like there's
point.
not enough matches to experiment with all the permutations.
That could be an entire podcast episode in and of itself. But I do feel like once they get that, then they can maybe recapture their status as contenders. I still think that if they have trouble consistently generating threats, then they still have some work to do. But the fact of the matter is, I think that like 6 or 7 spots on this team are set in stone. And I think that helps a lot when you're trying to develop an identity. The only problem is that almost all the question marks are in one phase of play.
Yeah.
I think that does cause more headaches than, a couple, like 1 or 2 question marks in each position. That would probably be a bit easier to handle.
For sure. No, and it'd be really easy to see who fits in kind of with the rest of the starters.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the immortal words of Hattie, let's wait and see what Bev Priestman shows us in her first international window of the season, which will be for the CONCACAF W Gold Cup. Sorry,
like a month and a half, right?
No, it's only a month away. Actually, it starts on February 20th. The window opens on the 20th. No, it actually starts on the 20th.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. So
time is
it's
creeping
here.
up on us. Yeah. So hopefully we're going to be getting news like sooner rather than later, because it's only a month away. Well, a month minus 1 day.
All right.
Right on. And then we have some other national team news as well.
It's definitely news.
It's something.
It's definitely news.
It's something. So on Friday, Canada Soccer, not only did they put out the statement, of course, letting us know that the women's national team will be going back to the She Believes Cup, but then they also put out a second statement. The statement, of course, was on the topic of the men's national team, and it was to inform all of us that Mauro Biello will lead the men's national team into their crucial knockout match to qualify for Copa America. That match, of course, is in March against Trinidad and Tobago. Will be taking place in Dallas. Was it last week that we talked about how it was the coaching that led to the shambolic collapse against Jamaica?
It was.
Okay, then. Do I need to ask you how you're feeling on this one, Elias? Your opinion?
I'm feeling.
But by all means, please.
I'm feeling.
Please.
Like we've been over this, right? I think we're all in agreement that Mauro Biello is not the right fit for this group.
Yeah.
That being said, it
He
doesn't
did
matter
it.
which coach is there. This team has no business losing this tie.
No,
Um,
exactly.
what I'm more worried about is the fact that we haven't heard anything on the front of the national team coach search in
No.
months. That's more of a cause for concern than the fact that Biella was named. I
Mhm.
wasn't too surprised just because of the fact that it has been complete radio silence, like not even reports,
Well, there was one
right?
sentence in the statement put out by Canada Soccer letting us know that the global search for a permanent men's national team coach is active and continues.
Is it now? It better be because well, it's been months. So
Yeah.
yeah, look, there hasn't even been as much as a whimper from any
Yeah,
reporters or anything like that about even interviews or potential front runners, right? So
exactly.
I think that I
Either
wasn't
they
too
are the
surprised
most
to see more
hermetically
Biella.
sealed federation in the
I've
history of time.
never I've never seen a job search in sports for a coach be this off the books and this
Yeah,
unreported on. So it maybe they're stalled, right? Again, it's tough to kind of speculate because there's literally no new
nothing to
information.
speculate with. Yeah,
It is it is bone dry out there. There's
yeah,
nothing. So at this point, it's not even like speculating what kind of manager you want. Because for me, it's Carlo Ancelotti or nothing. But that's neither here nor there.
no,
Um,
okay, I've come to terms with it not being Carlo Ancelotti. Okay,
it will be. Oh no,
I'm
I
like
am
grieving over
so
my
deep in
hypothetical
denial.
Ancelotti.
It's not even funny. I'm so deep in denial. It's 100% gonna be Carlo Ancelotti. 100%. We're
Okay,
gonna see that
you can
eyebrow
take over
erected at a
piloting that
Canadian
hype
player.
train, okay?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because
But yeah, look,
I'm off of it.
my biggest concern is the fact that we don't have a national team coach, and
Mhm.
we are now officially 2 and change years away from a World Cup that you're hosting.
Yeah,
So a
it's
literal once in a lifetime opportunity to kind of help grow your game, and you don't even know, let alone what coach, you don't even know what direction you're going in.
yeah.
So I think that is by far more than not qualifying for Copa America and more than all these different obstacles that the national team has. I think this is the biggest cause for concern
Mhm.
is the fact that they seem to kind of be floating in the wind and they don't really know which way they're going. And I'd love for any kind of indication otherwise, but it hasn't been provided in any capacity.
Yeah.
So we're kind of just left here sitting on our hands and wondering what's next. And that's a terrible feeling from a federation that, has all this momentum that
I
they
th-
seem glad to throw away.
do they still have the momentum?
I
Like, I mean,
I
they're
don't even
hosting a
know.
World Cup, so or they're hosting World Cup matches, I
Are
should
they?
say.
That could have fooled me.
I
I,
know. No, so I'm saying they should have momentum. And, obviously going into Qatar 2022, going into the Women's World Cup 2023, they had momentum. But like the relatively epic crash and burn that accompanied, say, the 2023 year for both teams.
both teams. Yeah, it was not great.
Um, aside from Christine Sinclair's send off, I like for me, like there isn't any momentum, honestly.
That's true.
Like,
Huh? That was the
yeah,
only
I really
good
got
thing that
nothing.
happened to the national teams all year. Jesus.
Yeah, the best thing that happens is a player
What's your
retired.
greatest player leaving? Jesus.
Yeah, truly. So for me, like honestly, they don't have any momentum right now. Obviously, I find this message pretty demotivating. The one that we got from Canada Soccer on Friday, and for the reasons that you highlighted, amongst the fact that the deep concerns that we have with the coaching quality that they're going to be entering this match with, because as we said, they should have been able to beat Jamaica, although Jamaica is a rapidly improving team, 100%. Um, they should have been able to beat Jamaica, and then it just all came apart in the second half of that second leg. So, yeah, pessimistic Eve is out in full force. This feels like,
Yeah.
I
This
don't
is
know, my bat signal or something.
this isn't even pessimism. This is just
Realism.
yeah, yeah. You're not even like this isn't even like an irrational like upset. This is just
Mhm.
completely validated.
Why, thank you.
So yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm sure that everyone is right there with you. In fact, I think that you're probably on the more optimistic end of the spectrum in terms of the overall
Oh boy.
of
Okay.
Team Canada fans.
Then we might have to start a support group for jaded
We are
Team Canada
well
fans.
way past that.
Yeah,
Um,
true that. Okay, well, I don't know. We can start a drinking club or something then. Actually, I was gonna say, yeah, if I'm running a support group, that's probably what it's gonna look like. um Anyway, unfortunately, no Camp Poutine was called this season for the men's national team. So the first window that Mauro Biello will be leading will be that crucial do or die window against Trinidad and Tobago, because that is the next FIFA official window.
oh my God, it's in March. Yeah, it's
It's
sneaking
in
up
March.
on me. Yeah.
Everything's sneaking up on you, Elias. My goodness. We're
Yeah.
gonna get you a calendar. Um
I need one.
So yeah, I think a whole lot of uncertainty, a whole lot of skepticism, a whole lot of nail biting between now and then for me.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yeah. So anyway, let's hope Canada Soccer is working really, really, really hard, way, way, way behind the scenes. So far behind the scenes that not even an inch of a rumors come out. Alrighty. Elias, is there anything I missed in our kind of potpourri of topics for this week?
No, that's pretty much it. A lot of minor topics this week,
A
but
lot of tidbits, I would
a
say,
lot of tidbit. That's the word. A lot of tidbits.
for
But
sure.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Then, in that case, we're gonna take a look at social media.
Yes, we are.
All right, let's get going.
Yes, the world of the Twitters. Yes, this is from Jan. In truth, plenty to do this here. This is has a picture of a potential CF Montreal starting 11 that we could see with Chantal Siwa on goal, Sosa, Waterman, and Corbett as your back three, then Edwards and Ron as your wing backs, Shwanya, Wanyama, and Yankov as at the 10, and then Opoku and Kokaro as your striking partnership. Eve, last week you said that they are nowhere near the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
What does this team tell you? And what does it, again, Sasala Cup may be a bit much, but
No,
what
it's
kind
definitely
of
a little
team
more
is it?
interesting. I don't think they'll be the whipping boys, certainly. You know, Sosa, I think, is going to be interesting to see at that left center back position if he's able to seize it for himself, because he is left footed. And so it is always so nice to have a left footed player play at that position. Of course, Raheem Edwards, I know he's done some developing, and I'll do my best to get on board. Ruan, I think will be very interesting. Look, I'm less pessimistic looking at this.
Okay.
That's the best I
That's
can
all
give
we
you,
wanted.
okay?
That's all we wanted. It's just less pessimism.
There we go. Yes. Okay, less pessimistic. Thank you. I appreciate you setting realistic targets for
That's a
me,
win. That's a win
Elias.
in my books. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes or no? Is this a playoff team?
I think it's a flirting with the playoff team.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that's like that 9-10 spot right now,
Oh,
based on how other teams have been operating, I guess, in the off season.
okay.
As always, given that we've literally like not seen any images aside from like the 2-minute videos that they post to kind of keep us interested of slow motion of them running back and forth in training, it's really, really hard to judge. The only team really whose preseason that we've seen is Inter Miami, which is
That's
not
true.
super representative and kind of weird
Also, I don't
that
know if you
it's.
watched that game, but it wasn't super entertaining either.
Well, I didn't really expect that.
It was a bit of a bore.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's preseason. There's only so much you can expect, and it's like
Some of the
preseason
best
against a
players of
team.
all time. So, I mean, I was kind of hoping for a bit more fireworks, but yeah.
Well, it's preseason. It's against a team like that you don't even play very often
It was
slash
a very
ever,
weird game.
whatever, because it was against El Salvador. It's against like a national team.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, in their global expedition around the world, they lost one of their players for the whole season by the looks of things.
Yes, one of their most promising players. I remember his first name, but
Facundo.
Farias. Yeah, Farias.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who is
So,
really a shame because he's actually a very exciting young player.
yeah.
And there's definitely going to be more people dropping like flies because they're going to do something like 30,000 kilometers on this trip,
Yes,
going around
exactly.
the world. So it is
Yeah,
almost
so
guaranteed that more people are going to get hurt, which is
yeah,
just a
so
great way to just, milk your players dry before the season even starts and trying to get every single dollar and cent you can out of these four
uh,
players.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you feel a little bit salty that you can't see your team's season, but then also you think about the grueling season or the grueling preseason journey that the the one televised team or broadcasted streamed team is going on. And you know what? I think I'll just close my mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's
On
move
to
on
the
to our
next
next
tweet.
tweet.
This is from 1642 MTL. For one weekend, Montreal was the capital of North American supporters groups. 3 days of discussions, collaboration, and discoveries in our beautiful city. Thank you, ISC supporters. So, for those who don't know, Montreal was the host for the annual supporters conference, where supporters groups from all over North America came to discuss the future of being a supporter for a team, an official supporter for a team. Um, Eve,
Mhm.
what is one thing that you as someone who takes the game in from the stands,
Yeah.
who's heavily involved in supporter culture, what's one thing you like to see change in, be it in MLS, be it in CONCACAF, be it in whatever governing
Mhm.
body? What's one thing you want to see changed for the better as a supporter?
I think I would like to see within MLS, I think I'd like to see consistency when it comes to the application of the rules of being a supporter, because it's really frustrating to see some teams be able to exercise. And like I understand that there are local laws that have to be respected, but at the foundation, I think the consistency with which MLS applies its rules to supporters and supporter groups. Um, I think the league would be better off if they could all operate similarly, or at least they weren't all punished for operating similarly, and some get away with it and some don't. Um, I'd love to see, obviously, as many resources as possible can be allocated to supporter group efforts, because of course they are generally, for the most part, funded by the individuals who make up those groups. And it's truly a labor of love. It's a volunteer gig. It's a passion project. So wherever and whenever resources can be allocated, although I think supporter groups should always remain independent of their clubs, so that they can express, their opinions on club
Mhm,
performance, philosophy, etc. Honestly, um, I also think like any way that they can get more resources to make excellent tifos, to buy, not flares certainly, but to buy
butterflies.
smoke grenades, whatever it might be. Um, the more I think that you get in the stands, the more that you can, the better the experience is for everybody, players on the pitch and other fans in the stadium as well.
Absolutely, we've seen some awesome tifos around MLS. I'd love to see an awesome tifo at Stade Saputo. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've definitely seen some really interesting ones. Obviously, it would be cool to see like a humongous one like we see from some of them. But like I said, they're obviously very, very costly. They're very, very labor intensive. So like it is definitely a huge ask of any supporters groups to put this together. All right, shall we?
Let's do it. Yes, this is from Sam. Look who's not going to see Messi in Montreal. And for those listening, this is Ticketmaster and some of the starting prices for Inter Miami versus CF Montreal on Saturday, May 11th.
Lord help
And
us.
it's 900, 800, $900. I saw one ticket on Ticketmaster that was like $4,800.
I'm not surprised.
I mean, I don't even have a question for you. I just need your reaction to the fact that these tickets are starting at, a couple hundred
Yeah.
dollars.
So it's resale, right?
Yeah.
In these
But that being
contexts.
said, there's a 6 match bundle being sold
Starting at like
starting at
600 and
750, which is
750. Oh, good lord.
750, which is includes the
That's
Miami
more than
game.
like many of the season
Most
tickets.
season tickets are like half that, not half that, but they're around the 400 range. So my
Yeah,
friend renewed his season tickets
mine
for
is in that
450.
vicinity.
So yeah, it's a little bit absurd, and they kind of snuck in some games,
Wednesday games,
some
some of
Wednesday
those
games, and
hot
some
tickets.
games where maybe the attendance won't be as good, and they kind of just snuck that in with the Miami game
Yeah,
because they'll
yeah.
know. But
I
what's your
mean,
reaction to stuff like this?
obviously, it goes without saying for anybody who hasn't checked out what the six pack is that the infamous match against Miami is included in that six
Yeah,
pack. Like, they're not completely delusional here. So I suspect anybody willing to pay that fee for that six pack is probably paying for that match.
well, given that
Um,
the resale for one ticket for one game is
yeah,
more than that, the entire.
yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I honestly didn't pay attention much around the league last year if things went like this in other markets. And I'd be
Pretty,
really curious and look back retrospectively as to, have we just completely lost the plot here in Montreal, or was this kind of a
no,
contagious
it's
problem?
pretty bad everywhere. It's pretty bad everywhere,
Okay, fair enough.
especially on
Yeah.
resale markets. I don't know exact figures, but
No, of course not. But they were high.
it's not
I
good.
know I saw definitely like a couple of isolated cases for sure.
I just remember I forget where it was. I think it's New England where where Messi was supposed to come to town and tickets were going for like a couple $100. And the second it
Oh,
came out that he wasn't playing because of that
the
what was it? It was a
special turf.
hamstring. It was a
Oh
hamstring
no.
knock or something, right?
Okay.
That he took towards the end of the season. The prices dropped to like $30.
I bet. I bet
So
because people are
yeah, if
like, yeah.
yeah. I mean people were sure they disappointed, but like that kind
That's
of
the
does
thing is
harm, right?
like
And it
when
hurts
you
the
buy it,
atmosphere.
yeah. 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 And buying a ticket for that much money so far in advance, you know how quickly a player can become injured, and an injury in soccer can be a multi-week, multi-month
Especially
ordeal.
36-year-old. Yeah,
Yeah, doing a 30,000 kilometer
exactly.
world trip of a preseason on top of it. Yeah, I I don't know. For me, it feels like a risky
Very, yeah.
investment for anybody. But of course, should it pan out, I'm sure it'll be a once in a lifetime experience for whoever does have that kind of cash to flash. Not it doesn't go with my philosophy of life, so like I don't really identify with it. But I understand there are people who find themselves in situations where it might be beneficial for them to sell their ticket. So I'll just like
Mm,
kind of accept it, I guess.
yeah. Understandable sometimes.
Yeah.
No messy shirts in the supporter section.
There, yeah. If there's no like enforcement of that, I'm gonna be sort of.
I'm sure
There
there
will
will be. Sure
there
there
will-
will be.
there will be discussion of that at the podcast following the match.
Exactly.
Fair warning. I'll set Hattie up with a topic.
Yeah.
All right. Next. Next
Next
thought.
tweet. Yeah. Yes, this is from Canada Soccer Daily. We just talked about her. Olivia Smith scores again for Sporting Lisbon. That's 6 goals and 6 assists in their last 7 starts. Her debut pro season is one of the best stories in Canadian soccer right now. It is. We have a lot of Canadian soccer players for both national teams that are currently tearing it up. Who
Yeah.
do you think is the most informed Canadian right now?
It's kind of hard not to say Olivia Smith.
It kind of
Because
has.
she is hot right now in in Portugal. Like I said, she is in some form. I mean, her team in general is like that. Oh, I'm so sorry. Her team in general is on fire. Um, that was like in an 8-0 win that she scored that
Yeah.
goal yesterday. So, it's not just her. Obviously, her team is very high performing. Who just describe the most informed? It's hard for me to think beyond Olivia Smith, honestly. Obviously we have Kyle Larin starting to find the net for Mallorca again. Then we have Jonathan David, who I don't believe scored this weekend, but he did score last weekend.
He did not score this week. No.
Yeah. Uh, you know, the players who I mentioned as well, Vanessa Gilles. I mean, for a central defender to have 6 headed goals in a season
In a
is
team with Wendy Renard, by the way.
yes.
She's like 6'1", if I'm not mistaken. So
She is a tall woman for sure.
yeah.
Either way, that's tremendously impressive as well. Yeah, I think they're probably the top 2 of my list right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So
Yeah.
I think Jonathan David especially in the new year, because again, he is as streaky as they come, and when he gets
Mm-hmm.
going, he can keep up with the best of them. He literally competed with Kylian Mbappe for, the Golden Boot in France. So when he gets going, look out. But I think that it also does depend on Nice, on Lille, sorry, who have
Yeah,
been very hot and cold. They're doing all
that's.
right this year. I think they're in like 4th place. Hattie knows more
Mhm.
about the French league than I do. But look, Jonathan David is definitely up there, but it's kind of hard to say not Olivia Smith right now
Yeah.
with the kind of work she's putting in.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what happens in that first window. That Bev
Surely
Priestman's
she's
going to
getting
have to work with her.
she's got to get at least minutes.
Oh, honestly, at the rate she's going, she's got to get a start. I'll say it.
You
I'll
can't
give my
argue
hot
with it.
take.
You can't
Yeah,
argue with it, especially given that some of
some of the
the
normal
usual
starters. Yeah,
suspects are NWSL players who are in off season and not necessarily
exactly.
mid-season form. I think that Evelyn
It's going to be
Vian, I
really
think
hard to
Olivia
argue
Smith,
with.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. All right, last tweet.
yes, this is from Vallejo. It's going to be a busy year for the Canadian women's national team as they will participate in the Women's Gold Cup next month, the She Believes Cup in April, all before the Paris Olympics Games this summer. Do you think that given the fact that there's all these different tune-up tournaments and games,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good thing, do you think that there's maybe a bit of a downside, the fact that we don't see the national team on home soil that often, and the fact that last time we did see them on home soil for consecutive games was a whole event, and it wasn't just
Mm.
business as usual?
Yeah, it is kind of disappointing. Obviously, this time of year, it's challenging at best. There are indoor venues that exist, and there are fields with heated surfaces, but it can be prohibitive to fans to sit in the stands for the length of a match this
As
time
I'm
of
sure
year.
you're aware.
Yes, intimately. Um, yeah, it is disappointing. I won't lie. I of course love to watch our national team, and it's all the harder to do so here in Montreal because unfortunately they don't come to visit very often. So we really have to appreciate it when we can get it. And I understand. Like I said, I understand certainly from a climactic perspective that I expect them not to be playing here in say late fall, winter, early spring, sure. And they did host the Women's World Cup back in 2015. And that was obviously an excellent opportunity for everybody because it was very much across the coast. But yeah, it's I'm a little greedy. I want to see him at home. I do.
I don't
I
think it's
do.
great to want to see your national team. I think it's perfectly reasonable for any soccer fan to want to see their national team.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm trying to come to terms with it. Obviously, for all kinds of reasons. I'm sure most of which start with a dollar sign. Canada isn't able to host a tournament or something like along those lines, and so we wait patiently for infrastructure to catch up, for coffers to be filled, and for positions as well to be filled. I think within the organization, so that I guess hopefully one day Canada can once again be the hosts of the party rather than jetting off to show up at it.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. All righty. So that brings us to the end of another show for this week. Thanks to everybody who listened along with us, who sent us your comments, whether that was throughout the week, and of course, your questions as well, or whether that was live tonight. We always appreciate it. Just as a reminder, of course, our content is always going to be free for everyone who wants to listen to it. However, if you do want to help support the podcast and help us grow our project, we do have a Patreon. That being said, I'll say goodbye and I'll say see you in 2 weeks as I won't be here next week. However, you will be left in the more than capable hands of Hattie and Elias for that episode. So wishing you all a wonderful week and thank you for listening to The Ball is Round.